Joined by Paul Diamond from BADD, Bad Company, of course. Also the Orient Express, excuse me, and Max Moon. And you've been in the business for a very long time. My very first question to you would be, were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I grew up in Winnipeg, Canada, so I got to see AWA. That's what I grew up with. But I really never thought that I would that would become my career someday. I was into soccer heavily, and that's all that I wanted to do. So I watched wrestling on TV, but I really didn't think that anything, or at any point I'd even consider doing something like that.
You never went to any AWA house shows early on?
You know what? Maybe a couple. I remember seeing Wahoo McDaniel and Mad Dog Vachon in a cage match. So yeah, so a couple of times, but not anything regular.
Talk about your family's connection to soccer. Your dad was a very famous soccer player.
Well, yeah, I was born in what back then was still Yugoslavia, which of course no longer exists. All the little state type of they all separated and wanted to become their own countries: Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia. Yeah, so being in Europe, I mean, that's soccer's that's pretty much the most popular sport in the world. Everywhere else but United States or North America. So that's and yeah, my dad played back in the 50s, and he was a goalkeeper, and that's what I wanted to be, and but I just wanted to find a way to make a living playing soccer. Of course, kids over there, they want to definitely try and get into that and just make it a career.
You actually got a scholarship to play soccer in Virginia, I believe.
I did, yeah. Old Dominion University, Norfolk, Virginia. I was still up in Canada. I had represented Manitoba in the under 16 and under 18 kind of, I guess provincial teams. In the United States it would be state teams, and sort of somebody kind of scouted me, and was offered to come down and go to school in Norfolk, as you said.
So how did you break into wrestling? How did that come about?
Well, you know what, after spending 2 seasons at Old Dominion, let's face it, I really went to college not to get an education but to play soccer.
Right.
So after my sophomore year, I had, wanted to, as I said earlier, play professionally. So at that time, there was the North American Soccer League in North America, obviously, and they had a draft just like the NFL would have, or NBA or whatever. And in 1980, like I said, finished my sophomore year, entered the NASL draft, and I was selected 6th overall in the first round of the 1980 North American Soccer League draft.
Oh, wow.
So, but saying, oh wow, yeah, I mean, it was really exciting and interesting, but the money was just
right.
Pretty much non-existent. First round, selection, 6th pick overall, and my signing bonus was $1,500.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
No, but you know what I mean. I've wanted to do that all my life, and I probably would have done it for nothing. But there, I had a chance to, have that as my career.
So how did you break into the wrestling business? I know you got trained by Boris Malenko. How did that come about?
Well, that's right. Actually, kind of went off on a tangent. But in 1984, North American Soccer League folded. The whole league just went under. Lack of funding. The owners had spent too much money bringing, European players that were kind of in the twilight of their careers to finish up there, and gave them a bunch of money, and it just didn't work out. So at that point, I still didn't see myself as having a regular job. So I kind of was trying to find another sort of anything to stay in sports or connected with sports, and in fact, the equipment manager with the Tampa Bay Rowdies, which was my last team in soccer, he had met Barry Windham, and at that point Barry was working for Florida Championship Wrestling and was really young and stuff, and the equipment manager had the soccer team go down to the Armory in Tampa and sort of introduced us, and we kind of, it was a co-op type of a deal between the soccer and the wrestling. And after going there the first time, he made it possible for me to go to matches every Tuesday. They had it at Fort Hesterly Armory in Tampa.
Right.
So, I kept going, and being that, again, soccer league had folded, I just kind of thought, well, I'm a pretty decent athlete, and just watching it more and more, I thought, well, might be something that I could do. And, I was fortunate that I was managing in Gold's Gym at the time, and I met Joe Malenko, which was Great Malenko's oldest son, and he told me that his dad had a wrestling school, and kind of rest is history.
What was your typical day like of training for you when you first broke in?
Well, you know what? When I was playing soccer, I only weighed about 175 pounds, so it was trying to gain weight as quick as possible, because back then, I mean, unless you were at least 210, 215, you weren't really gonna get too far in the business, or even if you got it all.
Right.
So that was one of the things. I just worked out with weights and ate everything that wasn't nailed down. But Boris Great Malenko, we would meet 3 afternoons a week. And then also on the weekends, and he just kind of show us the ropes, hour and a half to 2 hours each time.
Would you consider Boris your mentor?
Oh yeah, and you know what? I was so fortunate to have that family as a place that I trained, because I'm sure you've seen a bunch of quote unquote wrestling schools, and they turn out these guys and they don't have a clue. The Malenkos really not only, well, the Great Malenko, he was really awesome and taught me the basics, but the sons, Joe and Dean, were involved in wrestling at the time, and as far as different types of fancy moves and basically reversals and wrestling and stuff, that's what I mean, so starting in the business at that time, I knew way more than anybody that would have just kind of been trained and said, okay, go ahead and go.
Were you close to Dean and Joel?
But Joe more so than Dean. We kind of became friends. He worked out, or actually at the same gym, so he helped me, to work out with him. Also, what type of fitness, that we need for wrestling and stuff. And every now and then they show up at the wrestling school, and we'd work out. Like I said, they showed me some of the things that because the dad basically was just, well, you needed to know the basics to get into wrestling. Yeah, so.
Did you ever want to quit during the training?
No. I mean, that's the thing. Really had the determination of if there was something that I wanted to do, and when you are an athlete, you're not going to succeed. If you're going to quit at everything you try. And it was tough at times, but I did not want to listen to anyone. Whatever they had to say. Oh, you're not going to make it. There's so many people trying to do this, and. I just went on, and like I said, I was fortunate that with the Malenkos I was able to make some connections and get going in the business.
What was the hardest thing for you to learn early on in your career? So in college, you were learning how to bump.
No, I don't. The bumping wasn't really a problem, because in soccer I was a goalkeeper as well, and if you ever watch soccer, the goalies dive around and stuff, so that wasn't a problem. Of course, psychology, that just takes time. I had a good mentor, good teacher, but there's just, you had to keep doing it in order to kind of try and understand the psychology of the wrestling.
Now, did you ever work for Florida Championship Wrestling at all? Because I know your first big break was down in Texas.
Break, yeah, but actually my first job was at NWA. Ole Anderson had owned it at the time.
Right.
They were still on TBS with, Gordon Soley. Ronnie Garvin was there, Bob Roop, Thunderbolt Patterson.
So this is Georgia territory?
Yeah,
right.
yeah. That was my actual first, kind of a full-time make-a-living at job.
Right.
So, and I was there only about maybe 3 or 4 months. Went back to Tampa one weekend, came back to the TV taping, and I walk in there, and all Crockett's guys were there. Well, weekend or that week, whatever, Crockett had bought out Ole, and so I showed up there, and they've had all their guys there from Carolinas, and I just they were gonna, yeah. So they used me for a little while, maybe another month, and then I managed to actually hook up San Antonio, Texas All-Star Wrestling.
Now in Georgia, Ole Anderson was notorious for being a good booker, and also a lot of people say he's a bully. What lessons did you learn when you spent time down in Georgia?
I mean, it's just basically being really green in the business, and not necessarily. I don't think I really, talked with Ole a whole lot. One guy that I spent a lot of time with and rode to the matches with was Ronnie Garvin. So, he kind of sort of pointed out, what wrestling was all about and how you handle certain situations and stuff. And,
right.
Yeah. So that
how was Ronnie like outside the ring?
Oh,
good guy.
Really good guy, but man, he's crazy. I mean, the way he drives. Sometimes in the winter he'd get on the car in front of you, right on their bumper, and I'm sure they were, man, thought this guy's crazy, but yeah, he drove nuts. Also, he would yell out. There'd be women, jogging on the side of the road, whatever we drive by, and he'd roll down the window, "Get that fat ass moving,"
awesome.
Stuff like that. We had a good time.
What about Ole Anderson? Did you get along with him, or did you not really talk to him that much?
No, not really, because I was green, so my main thing was to make sure that I was booked, and I was gonna work opening matches at the time, and I was happy to be able to do that, get experience. I really didn't care at that point whether I was going over or not.
Right. Who were some guys that you worked with in the ring in Georgia territory?
Randy Rose, Ron Starr. Let's see, who else? Those guys, pretty much. Who else is there? But yeah, those are the guys kind of mainly that I worked with. I'm trying to think what other guys were there, kind of opening matches and stuff. You really kind of think of only those two. I'm sure it was Italian Stallion.
Right.
Yeah. And but that's about it.
Okay. Now down in Texas, when you went down for Texas All Star, who was the owner of that company? Was it
the guy's name was Fred Barron, and he had actually bought out the Blanchards. Tully's father, yes, right. Southwest Championship Wrestling became Texas All-Star Wrestling. This guy, Fred Barron, had owned he had used car lots. So,
right.
He had made some money at that. And he took over. When I first showed up, Buck Robley was the booker. And, the territory was kind of on hard times. We were only booked maybe 3 or 4 days a week, and the days that we did work were not really very well visited. So,
right.
It wasn't, but still it wasn't too bad. We had a $60 a night minimum guarantee at least. So, but Texas, of course, the size of Texas, man, we would drive to Odessa from San Antonio like every 2 weeks, and that's like 350 miles one way.
Yeah,
you get back the next morning about 5:30 in the morning. So for $60, it just
travel schedule sounds crazy. Texas.
Oh yeah.
No, you teamed up with Nick Kaninsky, I believe, and you guys were called the American Breed.
Yeah, at first, and actually, before Nick too, there was Frankie the Thumper Lancaster,
right?
And he was my tag team partner initially. He got a chance to go work for Watts in Louisiana, and at that time, Nick Kaninsky, the son of Gene Kaninsky, of course, had showed up down there in Texas, and he was green, too, and I wasn't exactly experienced, but they just kind of wanted to make a, young, sort of, rock and roll express kind of tag team, and that's what they did. We had tagged for a while, but, Nick just, for whatever reason, didn't get it. And it just, the tag team wasn't doing too well. And during that time, a young man had come back, also green. He had just been in Kansas City working for Harley Race, Shawn Michaels.
That's your first time you ever met Shawn?
Yeah, right. He was about 19. He had worked for Watts for a few months and then went to Kansas City, and then the guy there, Fred Barron, offered. He said, come back home to San Antonio, and he was getting a $500 a week guarantee. So to him that was great. He didn't have to pay for an apartment or nothing. So it seemed like worked out real good for him. But right from the start, Shawn wanted to be a singles wrestler, and he had made that plainly clear. However, it took a while before he achieved that. As I said, since my tag with Mick Kiniski wasn't working out too well, they had decided to put Shawn and I together as a tag team, called us the American Force.
Now, before you and Shawn teamed up, I believe with Kiniski, you worked Al Madrigal and Chavo Guerrero.
Yes.
Memories of those matches?
Yeah. I mean, those, especially Al Madrigal. I don't know how many people know of Al Madrigal, but he was really, really fun to work with. He just and also learned a lot of psychology from him. It was the time still where you didn't have to take 1,000 bumps to be able to get the response.
Right.
So yeah, from those guys, that was pretty much what I learned.
The Shawn Michaels. Now, when you first met him, did you see the potential right away? Or were you so green at yourself back then that you didn't realize that he was going to go on to be a huge name, or did you see the potential?
I couldn't really tell that, but one of the things that when Shawn was younger in high school and stuff, he was doing some diving, like diving into water and stuff. So he learned a bunch of kind of acrobatic stuff.
Right.
So at that point, I thought, being green as I was, that if you could do a bunch of that kind of stuff, that was going to get you somewhere. And of course, we know that's not the case. So that's what I saw in Shawn. And in fact, when we tagged up, I had tried to learn some of the moves from him. Thinking, okay, we're a tag, and if we can both do similar stuff and we can be interchangeable, that would make us a better team.
Is it true that Chris Adams came into the territory and helped you a little bit?
No, not really.
Okay.
But no, what's his, gosh, I was trying to think of the name of the guy that took over the book at that time. Oh my gosh. Hart.
What's his first name, Mike?
That's
What's
the
his
one.
last name?
Hart. Oh my Lord, I can't think. But he came up from Dallas.
Gary Hart.
Gary Hart. There
Okay.
you go. And so yeah, Gary Hart, and he wanted to, we were going to be his, babyface team and stuff. So yeah, that was it.
Tugboat was in the territory, I believe.
He was, yeah. It's funny because throughout my career, it kind of seems like we wound up in the same places. He got trained by Malenko's.
Okay.
We both wound up starting with Ole at TBS, and then he wound up going out to San Antonio as well. And after that, both wound up in Tennessee, and of course WWF. So yeah, it was just kind of weird the way that worked out.
Were you there when Bruiser Brody came in and out of the territory?
Yes.
What are your memories of Bruiser Brody?
He was working angle with Mark Lewin, and there was times that those guys just didn't get along, or whatever the booker wanted, Bruiser Brody just, if he didn't want to do something,
right,
he just wasn't going to do it. And so I remember a couple of real horrible matches that him and Mark Lewin had, because like I said, he just wasn't happy with what they were having them to do, and that was awful.
Did they get stiff with each other?
No, it wasn't really that, but just the fact that whatever the booker wanted to get accomplished, I'm sure Brody didn't want to go along with that. So
right,
I remember one match, just they like stood there for 10 minutes, and Lewin had like a fork gimmick and hitting Brody in the head with it. I mean, this went on. Oh, it was just terrible.
Now, when you were in Florida, why did you not work for Eddie Graham?
Well, one of the reasons I'm guessing too is Malenko, he had worked for Eddie Graham for a number of years. They had a, long feud going on and stuff. But eventually, Malenko wanted to start his own company, and he did. And so he was running in opposition to Eddie.
So you're one of his boys, and
yeah, at that time, if you were somebody that was, opposition, and actually, kind of was a chance perhaps of me having some difficult time finding work elsewhere just because apparently, I was sort of associated with Malenko.
When you were in Texas, did you have any offers to go work for Fritz at all?
No.
No.
No, not at all.
After Texas, I believe you made a move to Memphis.
I did, yeah. What happened there actually, as I said, Sean had wanted to, be a singles wrestler from day one.
Right.
And, after Gary Hart took over the book and stuff, and just the way things were going, he wasn't really happy. So Jose Lothario, who had trained him and kind of, showed him the way, got in touch with Ray Stevens up in the AWA. And so Sean got booked up there, which then, of course, split us up, and I wound up there on my own. And again, with Gary Hart just bringing a bunch of these guys from all over, I felt it was like the best time to make a move. So, well, I don't know. But yeah, Gary Hart got me booked in Tennessee. So.
What are your impressions of Jerry Jarrett as a promoter when you first met Jerry?
You know what? He was actually one, very creative. Tennessee, I think, was known for sort of being ahead of its time. Fabulous Ones and doing a bunch of videos with them and other
vignettes.
Right, exactly. Also, the angles that they were doing was pretty crazy. Again, something that had not been done or seen. A whole. A lot of different places. So that's the one thing. And also, Jerry realized that at the time, he had a bunch of young green guys that were willing to work hard and try and learn the stuff. So he really put in the effort to, have us to get better. Sometimes he'd have us to come over to his house and we'd work on interviews and stuff. Different types, because that was not our strong suit at the time. In fact, Jeff at that point had just graduated from high school.
Right.
So he started working while he was still in high school. He was, ring crew and refereed some and stuff. But once he graduated high school, he started working. So it was Jeff and myself and Pat Tanaka and Billy Travis, kind of the four. Tracy Smothers as well, and we go over to Jarrett's house, and again we'd work on interviews and things.
What were your initial impressions of Jerry Lawler?
Just what I heard from a lot of different people. He was the king of Memphis, and he believed it. And but real smart guy as far as the business goes. But he was just going to take care of himself.
I was going to ask you, I mean, for new guys coming into the territory, especially any baby faces, did you feel that it would be hard to be a top babyface there, given with all the egos who are already on top, especially with Jerry on top?
Yeah, and Bill Dundee and stuff, yeah. But, again, at the time, at that point, I had still been in the business maybe just a little over a year. So I had no business looking that far ahead anyways.
Gotcha.
And it was just, the great thing about being in Tennessee, that it was a weekly territory, and we worked, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. Also, being that it was weekly, when you worked an angle with somebody, I mean, I worked an angle with Joe LeDuc. He cut my hair, and, worked with him for about 6, 7 weeks. Barbed wire match, dog collar, I mean, all kind of gimmick matches and stuff. And, I'd stayed in Tennessee for about 2.5 years. I really learned a lot, and a lot of different matches. Also, how to work angles, because, working with the same person 6, 7 weeks in a row, you couldn't just do the same stuff. You're going to the same towns week after week. and the storyline had to advance, and you had to, do different things. So that really, I thought I benefited, from being there for that length of time.
Who was booking when you were down there?
It was at time Jerry Jarrett, and then when he kind of would run out of steam and ideas, and usually Lawler would take over.
Okay.
So they were kind of, back and forth.
Who did you travel with in Memphis?
The standard foursome was Tracy Smothers, Pat Tanaka, Jeff Jarrett, and myself. So yeah, we always.
Any good road stories with those guys?
Oh man. I mean, nothing really that crazy and stuff. Just your probably more crazy stories was when we were, Orient Express with Fuji. But now, we just, I mean, the one thing there was, being that it was a weekly territory, Tennessee, you sort of saw the same girls week after week and stuff.
I was going to ask you, Memphis was known for ring rats. So
oh yeah.
Was that one of the best territories for rats?
Yeah, and that's the thing. When we had, as far as that goes, we had lots of fun stuff.
All right.
But yeah.
Any good rat stories?
Any good rat stories? Yeah, I remember we'd normally we went Memphis. I lived in Nashville. Memphis was on Monday night. You went back home. Tuesday night was Louisville, Kentucky, and then Wednesday night was Evansville, Indiana. And most of the time we went home. Some guys stayed up in Louisville and went to Evansville the next day. So a couple of times we had done that, and had some of these rats. And at the time, the halcyon was going around, and so just like he gave them some of those, and I tell you, nobody really remembered a whole lot of what happened the night before. So, but yeah, not probably the smartest thing we could have done, but heck, you didn't think about that back then. So.
Was the pay as bad as everyone said it was in Memphis?
Yeah, I mean, their minimum guarantee was $50, and I do remember working, a week, 6 days, and real bad got a $300 check.
Wow.
And with all the driving, I'd say that we probably drove, 2,500 miles each week. So having the four of us, at least you didn't have to take your car to every trip, and everybody, back then charged trans and stuff. It was 3 cents a mile. So
right.
I mean, because of the wear and the tear on your car. I mean, I remember '86. I bought a brand new Grand Am. 9 months later, I had 72,000 miles.
That's crazy.
It is crazy, yeah.
What are your memories teaming up with Jeff Jarrett?
That was kind of just a short deal, and he was just, like I said, graduated from high school, so really green and stuff. But his dad was gonna push him no matter what.
Right.
So really, what I probably enjoyed more and probably benefited Jeff more as well was after I got turned heel, and then Pat as well, and they tagged us up, and the two of us working against Billy Travis and Jeff Jarrett. Now that we had a lot of fun with. I mean, over the years, I'd say, other than of course Sean and Marty, the Rockers, that we always enjoyed working each other, but Jeff and Billy, that'd probably be the second pair that I remember working with. That it was lots of fun and things went real well.
From Memphis, I believe you went over to Continental Wrestling?
I did, just for briefly. At that time, Continental already was on its last legs, and it was very, very. They were only running at that time maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, and it was just a matter of surviving. Heck, I'd fortunately kind of hooked up with a stripper, and other than if I had not met her, I wouldn't have had a place to live or food to eat or anything. And she was buying me stuff, so that worked out okay. Other than but there was just no way working 3 days a week for $50 a night. No way you can make it on that. So.
Now I believe in Continental you worked with Kiyosato and Tarzan Goto maybe one time.
That was actually not Continental. That was still with the Lawler back in Memphis.
Okay.
And that's actually my first trip from or to Japan for Baba stemmed from that. Tojo Yamamoto had, they had brought Tarzan Goto and Akio Sato into Memphis, and he kind of managed them. And so working with those guys, and Sato was sort of a booker in the United States for Baba.
Right.
So he's the one that was responsible for me going overseas the first time to Japan.
Did you like
for
working in
Baba.
Japan?
When I first went, I just wasn't ready, and I really didn't know, what it was all about. Back then when I went, you had your Stan Hansen and one of the Singh.
Tiger Jet Singh?
Yeah. And, those guys had been going there for years, and they were big stars over there. But I just did not really know what you had to do when you went over there to make sure that they would have you, to come back.
Right.
I went the one time, and I never went back for Baba. It was later on when I was with WWF, WWE, of course now.
SWS company?
No, WWF.
No.
Wait, we went over for tenure.
Right.
Yeah.
SWS.
Yeah. That, and then also, of course, when I was done with WWF, then I went for Inoki several times. So yeah. I mean, at that time, of course, I knew a whole lot more as to what you had to, how to work when you went over there.
How did you first meet Pat Tanaka? And how did you form Bad Company?
It was just I had been over there perhaps maybe a couple weeks, and I remember Jackson, Tennessee, and he, obviously he got booked from Crockett. He was in Carolinas. Pat's dad was part owner with Eddie Graham in Florida, so Pat had refereed and stuff. But, he wanted to work, so they sent him to Crockett and also sent him over to Japan to get him trained and stuff. But yeah, no, he just showed up, one night, Jackson, Tennessee, and it wasn't but maybe a few weeks later that things kind of, fell in place. But I could, he was pretty green still at the time as well. But yeah, it worked out real well. So.
Who gave you the name Bad Company?
I think we just kind of came up with that, and of course, there was also in Calgary there was a Bad Company,
right.
Pillman and Hart.
Yeah.
So that unfortunately we never got to sort of work those guys. Any kind of never worked them at all. So that would have been fun if we could have done that.
When you and Pat formed Bad Company, you worked a little bit with Luke and Butch, the Sheep Herders?
Yeah.
Memories of working those guys?
Oh, man, those guys were great. They are so fun. In fact, back in San Antonio, because I'm sure you know when the Sheep Herders were booking San Antonio, and
right.
It was just blood and guts, and the guy there, Fred Barron, that owned Texas All-Star Wrestling, he kind of wanted to try and sort of, give us a push, also to build some credibility in us. So he had brought them in for one show in San Antonio. So myself and Sean had worked them there, one night, and that was fun. But they were just real good guys, and sort of took care of whoever they work with, wouldn't take advantage of, because they knew we were green and stuff, and just working together and making it the best that it could be. So.
You got to work a little bit in the ring with Bill Dundee and Rocky Johnson?
Oh, yeah. Man, I don't know, that, Dundee, just the styles clash between us, and, Dundee just kind of did a lot of comedy, midget type of stuff. And by that time, Rocky had just got pretty heavy and, out of shape. And so, they tried to actually work an angle with us there in Memphis, but I forget who. I think we had the tag belts and, you know, wound up losing those guys. But it just didn't, I mean, it wasn't really fun, you know, for me to work with those guys just because, like I said, especially Bill, you know, just comedy. And but, you know, I guess that's how he got over in Tennessee, and he was still the superstar. So.
What are your early memories of the Nasty Boys in Memphis? And were they as crazy and wild in Memphis as they were later?
Oh, yeah. You know, I don't think, I think they've been the same way from day one. In fact, you know, I saw Knobs not too long ago there on that, the midget wrestling Hulk
Right,
thing.
right.
Man, you know, and I you know, look at his face and stuff and his body. I mean, he looks the same now that he looked 20, 30 years ago. I mean, I can't believe that. But yeah, they were, and in fact, you know, in Memphis there, when they first came in, and they came in as heels, and by that time, Pat and I were already heels, and we wound up sort of working each other, and for whatever reason, it turned them babyface. And, you know, and that was like really, you know, I felt really good about, like Memphis Monday night had a really decent crowd, and we were main event with the Nasties, and you know, kind of the first time I really kind of had a feeling that we had maybe something to do with some of the people that, you know, came to see that. But yeah, I don't understand. They turned them babyface. Never.
Did you ever cross any paths with Eddie Gilbert?
No.
No. What about Tommy Rich?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, when I first started with Ole, Tommy was still there. Yeah, and then later on, when Tommy was managing the full-blooded Italians,
right.
the FBI, and ECW there as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How did you wind up in AWA?
How did I wind up in the you know what? I think Pat was kind of responsible for that because he knew Wahoo real well, and at that time Wahoo was booking for Vern up there, and you know, with Continental and all of that, we were struggling down there, and so we got an opportunity, like I said, through Pat's knowing Wahoo to go up there.
What were your initial impressions of Vern Gagne?
Wow. You know, just a guy that sort of lived still in his time. You know, he really didn't want to.
A lot of people say that about Vern.
I didn't want to change, you know, with the times and stuff. You know, and he continued to do his TV, just a bunch of squash matches. You know, nobody was doing that anymore, and nobody wanted to watch that. In fact, I remember having a meeting one time, you know, and we were discussing just that, and you know, I told Vern, I said, you know, we just wind up beating a bunch of guys that don't mean anything, and you know, I told him, I said, you know, we should, you know, beat somebody up that, you know, is something around here, like you. And his answer was, oh no, you can't beat me up. I'm the Stizar around here. I said, oh man, okay. I didn't answer that.
What are your memories about Kurt Hennig from AWA?
You know, he was a good guy, and you know, AWA also, the Nasties were up there.
Right.
So Kurt, Nasties, Rockers, you know, all that was kind of sort of a clique, and they were partying and you know, a lot of drinking and just ribs and all kind of stuff.
What are some crazy ribs that you've seen?
You know what I saw? They working for Vernon. They had hired this guy to do ring announcing, and you know, he worked that first night. I forget. It might have been like Fargo, North Dakota or something. Anyway, that's that town really not necessary. But so, you know, Nasties kind of talked to him during the night and stuff, and he was convinced that he could go out drinking with them. No mistake. So what had happened was, you know, they went out, and of course they, you know, he was drinking shots and stuff, and they halcyon them, and the guy wound up passing out, and from what I heard, they shaved off both of his eyebrows, shaved off half of his beard, took a chunk out of his hair, and then he was wearing a suit. They cut the tie off and cut the one pant leg at the knee,
Awesome.
and then dropped him off in the parking lot of the hotel that he was staying at. Man, so he comes the next day to the show because he was going to announce again. Of course, he painted on the eyebrows. It's pretty funny.
What are your memories about meeting DDP? And did you realize he was going to be a big star back?
No idea. I mean, Pat and I, we just weren't real great at interviews. So I guess maybe that's the one thing Vern sort of may have done right, or I don't know who was really responsible. They were trying to find us somebody a mouthpiece, I suppose, and so I'm not sure. I think Paige might have sent them some pictures and things.
Right.
So they decided to bring him up there. And at that time, he even had no idea that he would probably, want to wrestle at some point. But he could definitely talk, and he had managed a bar down in Fort Myers, Florida, and had all those girls. So he'd bring the diamond dolls, every time he'd come up there, different ones and stuff. So that didn't hurt any either.
What do you remember working with Sean and Marty in AWA? You guys had some great matches in '88 with those guys.
We did. Unfortunately, they weren't. They didn't stay very long. When we came in there, right away, we used to tape TV in Vegas.
Right.
And so we'd do 3 or 4 weeks worth, and I don't know if it was the first TV or for sure the second. We went out there, and they wanted us to have first a non-title match, and we went over in that, and then also they were going to drop the belts, and they were not at all happy with the way.
They didn't want to do business.
Well, no, and I understand. I mean, we had hardly been there, but I guess. They were trying to make us to be, a strong team as they could, as quickly as they could, and I'm guessing they thought, those guys were over enough to where even if they, dropped the belts, it wouldn't hurt them that much. But no, I just remember being in a meeting, and they just didn't want to do that, and after we dropped the belts, they did not stay. Very long. I think Vince came calling, and they were there a short time, but then, something happened at the bar, and so they got fired after a couple of weeks and wound up down in Continental for a while, and then wound up going back to Vince. So.
In AWA, you also worked with Mondo and Chavo again?
Oh, yeah. And they also, Hector a couple of times as well. And we had, I think we had a 6-man in Vegas with those guys. And, they just... full of the Mexican high spots and stuff. So that was fun. It was fun working with those guys. It really was.
You worked with Ricky Rice and Derek Dukes?
Yes, yeah. That was, a little more difficult, but, those guys were pretty green. Yeah. So we just tried to, help them out as much as we could because, once the Rockers left and Nasties were gone, there's really not... any opponents for us. So
you worked with Kevin Terror and Brad Reagans?
Yeah,
title change.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that was kind of leading to Bad Company splitting up because leading up to and that finish where we dropped the belts. I think I hit Pat or something, I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so yeah, because. Shortly after that, then I tagged up with the Trooper, yes, the Del Wilkes, right. Yeah.
And you worked Enos and Bloom.
Yes, yeah, right.
Easy guys to work with?
Again, there was all there was green guys, Any guys that weren't green or were worth anything, Vince had grabbed them, and they were in WWF. So yeah, they weren't. They listened and they obviously wanted to get somewhere, which they did. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
What are your memories of Super Clash 3? I think you teamed with Medusa against Top Guns and Wendy Richter.
Yeah. Um,
Easy match.
oh yeah. The match wasn't because like I said, we'd worked with Dukes and Rice and stuff, and then the girls. I think they'd worked that to where Medusa dropped the belt to Wendy. But yeah, no, it wasn't a difficult match. But I think that like Super. I mean, for what it was, it certainly didn't draw very well. So, but
memories of Curry Von Erck when Curry came in.
Oh man, Kerry was just, and God bless his soul, but he was just really messed up. He'd show up at TV and then shake your hand and walk away, and then 5 minutes later, he would not remember that he saw you at all and go all over again. Shake. And I remember WWF. I had worked a singles match that night with Jim Brunzell, and we had caught a ride from the hotel to the building with Kerry. And we got in a car and we're going back to the hotel, and Kerry goes, "Man, that was a heck of a tag team match you guys had tonight." I thought maybe he was joking or whatever, but no, he's just, I've heard, a lot of stories of, when he, world class, they had the world by the,
oh yeah.
And they would come to shows all messed up and all kind of, or wouldn't show up at all, and pretty soon they yeah, oh yeah.
Memories of Tom Zink.
Tom Zink. Well, he had tagged with Rick Martel there for a while with Vince.
Right.
And then also he had a deal. I think going to Japan with Doug Furness, I think it was, or something like that.
I forgot.
But anyway, he was just really into himself, because he was like I think he was a bodybuilder before wrestling and stuff. So yeah, he was kind of, into himself. But I didn't mind working with him. We were trying to, work an angle there when Bad Company split up to where he came in to save me. And then since he had lost his partner in Japan, him and we had got pictures and stuff, and he was going to help me to get booked over there. But that fell through. He was handling the business part of it, so I don't know exactly what happened, but never did work out. So, but like I said, primarily he was kind of, into himself, just sort of bodybuilding type of attitude.
Gotcha. What about Greg Gagne? Did you get along with Greg?
I did, but you know what? The funny thing, the angle that I just mentioned, where we had set up to where Bad Company would split, and I used Tom Zink to come and save me, and where we were going to tag. And Greg's response to that was, "Well, why didn't I want him to come and save me?" And I really don't think that required an answer, but
right.
We were trying to kind of have a tag team, young guys looking halfway decent, not so.
Right. What about Larry Zbyszko? Memories of Larry?
Oh, Larry Land. Got along with Larry real good. I only worked with him a couple of times. But during the time that Larry was up there and AWA champion, AWA wasn't running a whole lot of shows, and the ones that did run, were just kind of spot shows. So, but can't blame him. Larry married obviously Vern's daughter, so hey, if you could do that.
More power to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, I got along with Larry great. He was, pretty funny and Yeah, no.
Were you there when Paul Heyman came in the company at all with the Midnights, or were you already?
When Paul came in
Paul Heyman came in with the original Midnight Express
to Vern's?
to Vern's.
No, yeah, no,
Okay.
I was not. No, the only time, I mean, I worked for Paul
Right.
for ECW on 2 occasions, and also he was in Tennessee, but was not. We tried to, in fact, get them to have him manage us,
Right.
but we wound up. Our manager was downtown Bruno,
Right. I remember.
so yeah.
What about Eric Bischoff? He was, an announcer in AWA. Were you there when he was there?
Yeah, and that is just the weirdest thing. I mean, here's a guy that they know his ass from a hole in the ground, and the only thing that he was doing in AWA, he was actually the guy just running the camera when we were doing interviews, and then sometime later, he went to WCW and. Not long after that, man, he's running the whole joint. So I have no idea how, or what happened, or who would have ever thought that Eric Bischoff knew anything about the wrestling business. But obviously, I can't blame the guy for, hey, you got to do what you can for yourself to, get to the best position you can. So, but I don't know, what happened there in the WCW. But I did come in there a couple of times. Steve Austin was still there
Right.
as Stunning Steve, and I had worked him under a hood because he was getting ready, I think, to face Muda. And then I had also worked Johnny B. Bad, and we had a real good match. And to kind of tell you how much Eric knew about wrestling was, after we had that match and stuff, he pulled, Johnny aside and was telling him, oh, what a great match he had. But I guess the other person that was in the ring had nothing to do with that. So, but really, that's kind of like, what he felt, and seeing that, I knew that he just didn't get it.
Right. Now, before WCW, before you went there, obviously you worked in WWF. We went there in 1990.
Yep.
How did you get into the WWF and leave AWA? How did that come about?
Like I said, AWA was just slowing down to pretty much where, it was gonna totally shut down. In fact, at the time, the money just wasn't there. So what I decided that I was going to go back to school, and actually I entered like an ITT type of school up in Minneapolis to computer repair. And I had met my wife, now wife, back then, and I knew that I had to do something because wrestling certainly wasn't making me a living that I wanted.
Right.
So that's why I took this course, and we had agreed that I wasn't going to call anybody. I didn't want to know if any territory needed any guys, and it was like a 1-year deal. I was going to finish this, and then I'll have something in hand, and if something should come up after that, fine. If not, then at least I get a job, and have our family survive.
Right.
But halfway through, at that time, Pat had already wound up there with Sato as the original Orient Express, and so he wound up calling me one day, and he said that J.J. Dillon was still up there. He had asked him, what I was doing and stuff, and so it wasn't a couple of days later that I actually got a call from JJ, and they wanted to bring me in and kind of get like a trial, work some matches and stuff. And it wasn't but a couple of days later, I guess, someone, they were short or whatever, and they called me and, hey, can you go to Oklahoma City today? Oh yeah, boom, got my stuff and
Right.
Headed on out there. And so I worked a few matches. And this was time about leading into the Toronto WrestleMania. So, at that point, I still didn't know if I had got a job or anything
Right.
like that. But so after the WrestleMania, I got some tickets for TV and stuff, and then when I went up there, they had their wonderful contract that had me sign that. But I discussed that with a million people about being an independent contractor. Yet you signed this contract where you were told, where to be, that you couldn't work for anybody else, what to do, but yet you were an independent contractor. Okay, and yeah, and really, those contracts back then, what to fulfill their side of the contract, they had to book you 10 times in a year at $150 per. Once they had done that, they had fulfilled their obligation of the contract, and you had no
They
leg.
can starve you.
Yes, exactly, and that happened to a lot of guys. But so anyways, I did sign that and stuff, and when I first started, I was working basically not 100% of the shows, but pretty good bit. But TV, I was just doing jobs primarily and stuff, and wasn't really thrilled with that. But hey, you're not gonna quit
Right.
WWF and so luckily then, for whatever reason, Sato went back to Japan to work for Baba again, and we were in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and Rockers were there, and it was supposed to have been Rockers against Orient Express. Well, Sato at that point was already gone, and I was on the card, so Tony Gurria was the agent. I'm sure somebody would have told him, but anyway, so they wound up tagging Pat and I together just for that night, since they knew of the past, and we wound up having that match, and it went real well. And so after that, before I went to Next TV, they had called me and told me about the spot on the Orient Express and stuff, and they were gonna put me in there. So.
Now, did you meet with Vince at all when you first came in, or not? Just JJ?
I know I did actually meet with Vince. I mean,
Impressions?
Pat Patterson, introduced me to him and stuff.
What were your
and,
impressions of him?
You know what? Just to be introduced to him, and I was kind of scared to death and all shaking and stuff. So I really, I couldn't. I mean, there wasn't anything to really go by. I mean, just kind of met the man, and that was really all for a few seconds. So.
Now, when you first came in, you worked a couple singles matches. I believe some of the guys you worked with was Dustin Rhodes and
Yeah, I actually worked Dustin, Jim Powers, Al Perez a couple of times. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, so that, like I said, that was at the point that I was working house shows, but not necessarily all the house shows that they had running. Until, of course, the Orient Express thing came open. But again, anybody wants to, accomplish as much as they can in any business that you're in. So, nobody's going to be pleased with having to do jobs and stuff, especially really, TV. And, I wound up putting Dusty Rhodes over and Snuka and but I think really what really just really irked me was the fact when Brady Boone was going to be the Battle Cat.
right.
Well, because of the mask, whatever, he didn't wind up doing it. So for whoever, they put on Bob Bradley.
Huh.
Wow. And so I wound up working just a job match on TV with Bob Bradley as the Battle Cat. And that was the most embarrassed I had ever been in this business, to have to actually, put over a guy. I mean, I never, and I would do the best job that I could to put somebody over. But that guy, man, it was just, wow. I mean, unbelievably bad.
You don't think he deserved
Oh, gosh.
the work?
Oh, gosh, no. I mean, he was just horrible.
Who are some other guys that you got to work with as partners with Pat Tanaka and WWE? As the Orient Express, what other teams did you work
Oh
with?
yeah, we worked with Legion of Doom.
Okay.
A whole
Any
bunch.
problems with those guys?
No, no. Then they loved working with us. Just because we were willing to bump our asses off for
Pat
them.
would take his clothesline spin bump all the time.
Right, and a backdrop up through the sky.
Right.
So yeah, we had worked out a match with those guys. They loved it because it made them look just awesome.
Right.
They surely didn't enjoy. I mean, when they're working like say Barbarian and
Warlord.
or Demolition or whatever.
Right.
You just had four guys just glomming each other, but this way, yeah. And I had to take that LOD finish every time,
Oh.
twice on Saturday and Sunday.
Who did you travel with in WWF? Was it just Pat?
No. Depending on who was, because when I first started, they were still running 3 shows a night. And then shortly they cut it down to 2, and eventually went down to 1.
Right.
But so when you had 3, you just didn't have, depending on who. I mean, and especially when we became Orient Express, we were responsible for Fuji, so we had to take him. That was part of the deal was he was gonna ride with us, and he was not to pay any trans or just we paid for the rental cars and stuff like that. But then at times it seemed like when the Rockers, Jannetty and Pat they'd go together, and Sean and I would go together. So because those 2 guys, Pat and Mario, were just crazy party animals. We were kind of sort of more mellow.
What was the
down
drug
to
scene
earth.
like back then?
Oh man, it was a lot of I mean, well, at first steroids was just it wasn't any big deal until of course they decided to test for all of that. But the party scene was just a lot of different things. Cocaine, I know pot, that was just no big deal. But also then the pills with like the somas and of course the Vicodin and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean.
Did you ever get caught up in all that?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, and I did not till I was 27 years old. I never really drank or touched nothing, and boy, when I did get on that stuff, it was a pretty rapid trip down. It's just horrible. Especially like the pain pills. Because it's not only psychological, where to get off. If that was just the case, it wouldn't be that hard. But it's the physical withdrawals that really, you after a day and a half, 2 days, your body's just hurting so bad that you do anything and whatever it took to get some more or get money to get more. Or it didn't matter if your family had money to eat or to pay any bills, and that's just really a sad situation. And of course, how many guys have passed away in the last few years is just, man, unbelievable.
We were just talking. You asked what happened to one of your students, Lance Caden. You didn't know that he passed away. And
no, I'm shocked. Wow.
In wrestling, whose death has shocked you the most?
Oh gosh, but really, I mean, I would say Lance, just because when he came to Sean's wrestling school, I mean, he was a kid from Nebraska, 18 years old, just out of high school, big kid, good body and stuff. And I just never would have imagined that he'd even, get messed up with that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, that just really blew me away here, a few minutes ago. I just cannot. And I know, well, I'm not sure if he was still married at the time or whatever, but I know he had a child, had a daughter or something like that.
Right, I remember seeing them at the show.
Yeah.
Over there.
So, man.
How did the Max Moon gimmick come about for you in 1992? Obviously, Conan was slated for the spot. And you had a fallout backstage.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I imagine Fallout had to obviously, I think, had to have happened before because I forget where the TV was that day, but he just never showed up, you know. And I mean, it just typical of, you know, being in the right place at the right time. And I've told this story, anybody that'll listen, but you know, I was the girls that you know were sewing the costumes and stuff. They always have their table and all that, and they'd be working there. And at the time, I was walking by, and I wound up talking to them. You know, I said, well, you know, the Max Moon costume, or rather, they didn't have the name for it at that point. But anyways, I said, you know, it's probably, you know, if you made a few minor alterations, I bet you I could fit into it. And we were kind of being loud and just laughing and stuff. And like a couple minutes later, I didn't realize Vince's office was just like across the hall.
Right.
And all of a sudden the door opens and he comes out and he goes, what are you guys laughing about? And I told them, I said, you know what, I was just telling the girls that if, you know, if they made a few small alterations, I bet you I could, you know, fit into their costume. And he goes, haha, yeah. And he turned around and went back into his office. Never thought nothing of it. And, you know, we were talking, and maybe 5 minutes later, he opens the door again, and he goes, you, come here. And I thought, oh, man, what do I do now? You know, but so he had me to come in his office, and he shut the door, and he goes, you know what you're talking about, that gimmick? He goes, you got it. It's yours. Do what you want with it.
Wow.
So I walked around the TV taping telling everybody what had just happened.
Right.
I was thrilled and happier than pig and shit.
Now, did you know what they had in mind for that gimmick and the push as far as that gimmick goes, or did you?
I didn't know, but I mean, pretty much, you know, from that whole costume, man, initially, they had to spend a ton of money. I mean, because Conan had actually, and you know, this thing, it had like a helmet and these lights that flashed on and off.
Right.
There was also these like leg huge things that, I mean, it was just like a whole thing, like a robot, like these, like a shoulder pads, and had hit the button, smoke coming out, and then of course the two arm pieces, the one side, the flames would shoot out, and the other one confetti. But so I'm guessing that they were, you know, had big plans for it. And I'm not sure what happened with Conan, but what happened with the whole costume was that one, it was made by these two guys in L.A. that they do props for movies, and you know, movies obviously you're gonna use it for the movie and done. But as far as me, I was gonna have to, you know, use this night after night.
Right.
And, you know, we were having all kinds of problems with things not working properly. Also, the, like the shoulder pad thing, and then that like blew out smoke.
Right.
Well, what it was stuff that was in, I think, fire extinguishers or whatever. So if I was to take this from show to show, you couldn't put that on an airplane because of the chance of it exploding. It was pressurized. Right. So I would have had to empty the thing every night. Then when I got to the town, find a place that filled fire extinguishers. Right. So luckily, you know, Vince realized that this was just not going to be anything. Yeah, just not, you know. So they pretty much got rid of everything other than the two arm pieces. We had kept that. They built me like this blue trunk, and even that, you know, was heavy, and so. But I had to take care of that, and again, you know, it shot flames one side and confetti the other, and even that, I still had problems with it malfunctioning. In fact, I got to tell you this. I don't know if you know, I was on the very first episode of Raw.
You were Sean.
for the Intercontinental title as Max Moon.
Right.
And so, if you ever watch the tape, I think it's kind of like shot from up high. And anyway, so I walk out. There's the guy with the camera about as far as this camera is right now.
Right.
And he's backing up, and I go out there and I put my arm up and I hit the button, and nothing comes out. And I mean, we were raw for damn, what the hell. So I was just pissed off, and I am putting my arm down. When it got to here, the thing goes off, shoots the guy right in the face, and he dropped the camera like he was shot dead. It singed off some of his eyebrow, some of his hair, man. And I mean, like I said, the camera has got to be worth a few bucks. He didn't care, man. He just dropped down like somebody shot him. Yeah, but it was just again, those things would malfunction more than they would work. And at the same time, the other side, again, you use those cartridges they use in
CO2?
Yes, and you're not supposed to have that on an airplane. But I really kind of ignored that part of it. I mean, I wasn't going to go, every time I got to a new town, to have to go to a store to buy some of those.
Right.
So I just packed them in that trunk and stuff, and yeah, it worked out okay, but...
When you were Max Moon, you got to work some guys like Terry Taylor, Rick Martel.
Yeah. I mean, really enjoyed working. Terry Taylor was a heck of a worker, and they were really pleased, with the matches that we were having and stuff.
What about Barry Darso, Repo Man?
Well, Barry's just, a big guy, so obviously it was going to be a different style, but it wasn't too bad. I remember, working the Repo Man on TV, the one match, and, he was able to kind of do things with me that I wanted to do. So, the one thing about Barry was, like, he really kind of, sort of creative, after Demolition and stuff. He came up with that Repo Man himself.
Oh, wow.
And presented it to Vince, and, it worked out for him, for a while, so.
As far as WWE, the travel, what was the travel schedule like for you?
Back then, it was, they would have a 10-day tour, then they'd fly you home on the last day, then you'd have 3 days off, then go back on the road for 4 days, 3 days off, and start with 10 again.
Right.
So this was just a year-round grind.
You ever want to crack?
Yeah, because they just didn't care. As long as they got you to the town, it didn't matter if you, were wherever you were the night before and had to drive to get back to, and then have the flight leave at 5 in the morning.
Right.
And so, and it just was not the easiest, but sort of kind of got used to it. And
did you ever see any of the boys ever crack?
Nah, they were just, but, that's why when you say crack, and I would guess, turning to
Drugs and shit.
that probably prevented some of the boys from cracking. You know what I mean?
You gotcha.
But I'm sure if that stuff wasn't around, I'm sure, a whole lot of guys would not have, made it.
You mentioned earlier on that you got to work with Sean for the very first Monday Night Raw.
Mm-hmm.
How good was that match? Was it?
It was, yeah, oh yeah.
You had a long history with Sean.
Oh yeah.
Even
yeah.
after WWE, we'll talk about. So.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, no, I knew, didn't have to worry about, that it would be a good match. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
Who was the champion of WWF when you were there? Who was on top? Was it Hogan, or Hogan's already pretty much done his run?
Hogan didn't.
This is
No,
92,
but I know Hogan dropped the title to
Yoko?
Ultimate Warrior at Toronto.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking a different year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ultimate Warrior was on top for a while there.
How was Warrior backstage?
I don't know. Never. He was kind of, and that, that's because, like, Hogan was like one of the boys. He never. I mean, he treated everybody the same, and very helpful and stuff. In fact, I'll tell you what. I had. They of course would do drug screens for like cocaine and pot and all that stuff, and normally they would not do those at TV tapings.
Right.
Well, we had I forgot where we were, everybody partied on the weekend and stuff. TV was Monday, Tuesday. We show up for TV, and all of a sudden the word started to get around, they're testing. And oh my God, we're so, most people are so dirty. And so, you found a way to get some clean urine and stuff, but then it was a matter of trying to, get away with, putting it in a bottle. And that's where Hogan, I went in there, and Arnold Skolin was doing the urine screens. And when Arnold was doing them, you knew that they wanted him to, really closely, watch that there was no funny business or anything. And, I had my little bottle of clean urine and stuff, but I just didn't know what I was going to do. All of a sudden, Hogan comes to the door. He goes, "Hey, Arnie, they're calling you over here, come." And he like turned him around and talked to him, and I poured the stuff in there, and but oh man, leave me alone, I got to do this. And by the time he turned around, I was done. And boy, I was surely glad that I didn't ask for it or whatever, but he just
wow. Huh.
So it was pretty cool.
Now, near the end of your run in WWF, you started doing a couple jobs here and there. Did you feel your time was almost up in the WWF?
Well, I mean, I suppose that would be the indication of, the way things were going. So, but I'm not sure, why or what. That's the only time that I really, you asked me about what I thought about Vince and stuff. And, over the years that I had worked there, I mean, just because I wasn't on top, I didn't really deal with Vince a whole lot. I had talked to him a few times with some ideas that I thought that I could possibly do as different gimmicks and things of that nature. But,
so he's approachable?
Oh yeah. But the thing about Vince was that he was approachable. But you went in there, and you tried to talk to him, and he would talk to you, and just go in circles, and you'd walk out of there, and for like when you first you were walking out of there, you were like happy, and then you go out of there and you just realized you hadn't accomplished a damn thing.
All right.
Because you were at the exact same spot you were when you were going to go talk to him. So he knew how to kind of. But no, yeah. Back to I could not get a straight answer from them there at the end. And man, they just put me off. Nobody would answer the phone at the office. And of course, I didn't realize, of course, but my contract was about to expire. So when FedEx showed up, I got the message.
So did you leave on good terms with them when you got the message, or was it bad terms? Or?
No,
Okay.
I can't.
Did you call the office after you got the FedEx package and say, "Hey, am I really done?" Or
oh no, I didn't say that, but I pretty much called them, and because I had started looking for indie shows and stuff, and I talked to JJ, because I mean the Orient Express as well as Max Moon, those were their gimmicks, so but I really so. When I did call the office, I just wanted them to know that I told JJ, I said, what, I have a family that I have to feed and stuff, so I really don't care that that this is your gimmick or whatever. I'm still going to continue to use it, and if you guys have a problem with it, but I'm sure I'll find out.
Did that leave you alone?
Yeah, I didn't do nothing.
In '93, you came into ECW.
Yep.
What were your initial impressions of Paul Heyman?
Well, I mean, I had already met Paul in Tennessee about 5 years prior to that. So, but I did not at that point. I didn't realize what a creative guy Paul was until actually working for him at ECW. and you know, seeing the things and the ideas that you know, he was coming up with, and just crazy stuff. In fact, well, one of the things that didn't really work out real great. We worked with gosh.
Ian and Axel, Public Enemy.
Public Enemy.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was, and he came up with this idea where, like, you know, Pat and one of their guys, they were going to work in the ring, and the two of us were going to be in a cage.
Right.
And then I think whoever went over, then you would supposed to run up there before the time expired and let your guy out, and then the other guy, there would be an explosion.
Right, right.
Well, Paul didn't realize that, you know, to do all that stuff, you had to have special permits and things of that nature.
I was there that night.
That
got on the mic.
Oh.
It was one of the best pops ever.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the people really shit on that. Oh my God.
I think it was the body count match or something like that. He promoted it as or something. But I know the show. I remember that show.
Yeah, I mean, they had, like, I mean, the smoke. I forget what he was burning there, and there wasn't even a cage. It was just one side of the cage.
Right.
And we weren't handcuffed either. We were just kind of holding onto the cage and having the handcuff around one wrist, but not cuffed on the other. And I mean, everything that could go wrong did, and it was a heck of a house, really. But you know, once that, I mean, I think they started chatting like money back or something like that.
You also got to work with Ian and Axel. Memories of working with the Rottens?
Yeah, man, you know.
Was what it was.
Yeah, they just, you know, they were just kind of hardcore, not really technical. I mean, you know, so.
You worked with Taz and Kevin Sullivan?
Yeah. That's the same.
Right.
I mean, you know, Taz is, of course, with the suplexes up, but, you know, Kevin just never did do a whole lot.
Doesn't
it was
see.
yeah, right, his gimmick, you know, the way it was. So, you know, the one guy really, and in fact, I just watched Rod. No, not Rod. Wait a minute. What was it? Oh, no. Impact, yeah, because Rob Van Dam was who I was getting at. I remember working with him, you know, and this was like '97 now, and here we are in 2012. So we're talking 15 years later. Rob Van Dam looks the same, works the same as 50. I cannot believe that of all the acrobatic things and stuff that he has done, still continues to do. And, you know, I remember back then, and, you know, he didn't really work out that hard to how he stayed in this shape, and, you know, his body's not changed any at all, and it's amazing, it really is.
I remember at some of the house shows for ECW, the boys would always joke around that Pat would tape some of his drugs to his ribs on his tape, and so none of the boys steal it. Is that true?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
No.
Memories of the locker room in general. It was a pretty crazy locker room. You had a lot of different people, and the drug scene in ECW was pretty crazy. What are your memories of the locker room?
Yeah, man, and, you know, like Sandman, and have a case of beer like in the shower, and you know, but you know, I just never understood. But apparently he worked better when he had his beer, you know, and he couldn't really work without it. It was, you know, it was pretty crazy. Very, I have to say, you know, and as much as Paul was creative and all of that, it was the most disorganized locker room I've ever been in.
Right.
I mean, your show's supposed to start at 8, it's 8:15, and you still don't have finishes, or actually don't even know what the card is. Because when they would, you know, promote their shows, it never had a card on there. It just, you know, they knew they were going to get matches, what they were going to be, who the hell knows.
You pull up the table and script the role, yeah, especially at the arena.
Absolutely.
What are your memories of Tommy Dreamer and guys like Sabu?
I enjoyed working with Tommy, you know, really, really good guy. And Sabu, man, he's pretty crazy. You know, the stuff that he did. One thing I remember, you know, one of the ECW just house shows, but I think he might have and I'm not sure who he was working with, but anyway, I think it was Van Dam. But they had a table in the ring, and what he was going to do was run to the middle of the ropes, jump on the second rope, and
Side moves.
backflip. Yeah.
Right.
Before that, somehow they bumped the table and he got turned over and the legs were up.
His mouth. Yep.
Yeah, when he did the backflip and his lip, his mouth, his teeth hit the leg of the table that was upright and cut his lip. I mean, his teeth actually cut through his lip. And, he went into the dressing rooms, and a few minutes later he came back and finished the match. And then the other thing that, not many people know is that that night, we're in our room, and, he was in his room. We get a phone call. He goes, "Anybody have any crazy glue?"
Yeah.
That's what he did. He never went to the hospital. No, he crazy glued his lip together, and then like the next night he just put like Band-Aid and tape on it and kept on working.
Anything else in the ECW stick out? Any other good stories from ECW? Or you weren't there that long, you guys.
I wasn't. No, we weren't actually. And the difference, of course, 93 was just when it was kind of getting started.
Right.
So it wasn't, you might have had 150, 200 people at your tapings, as opposed to 97 when the arena in Philly was packed, and also they were running shows, house shows throughout places, and those were doing pretty well. So, but I missed the years of the super hardcore stuff,
right,
when they were beating each other with frying pans and whatever. That was pretty nuts. And you were talking about Tommy Dreamer. I mean, there's a guy that really he put his body on the line, and he did a lot of that dangerous, but all those guys did really, because without doing all of that, ECW would not have become what it eventually did. It was extreme, the most extreme of anybody. I thought, they tried to copy hardcore, but it just wasn't like what ECW was at its peak and its heyday.
Now, in '94, you ended up in WCW, and you said it was pretty much a short run. We talk about that.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Did the office call you, or did you contact them?
No, yeah, they called me, and I was actually, at that time they were, Bischoff was in charge, and they were, guys were getting contracts all over the place there. So I thought, I had a really good chance, but I'm not really sure. I worked a few TVs, like I said, with Austin and Johnny B. Bad. I think we worked a tag with Arn and Steamboat.
Right.
And it all went well. We had worked a dark match at pay-per-view in Chicago with Sullivan and what was supposed to be his brother,
Dave Sullivan.
Yeah, right.
God, I watched too much wrestling.
But so I really never did find out, or don't know what the reason was why we were never offered a contract. But I mean, I thought we did what we always did: is worked hard, bumped our asses off, and so I don't know.
Now, after WCW, you returned to USWA, Memphis again, teaming up with Stephen Dunn down there.
Yeah.
Just did some shots for them, and Brent Prentice.
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of get myself back in shape and stuff with, possibility of, something bigger or better coming my way. But, that just really kind of never panned out that way. Although, with working with Sean there, we'll get to that,
Didn't you tear your tricep in between this?
I did in Memphis.
How long were you out for?
6 months. That's right, right there. That was that was pretty bad. But so I could not work for all that time. But USWA was just I don't know, just it wasn't nothing like what Tennessee used to be. I mean, and you know, Tennessee was at times still pretty bad, but this was worse than anything that you know, they didn't run that many shows.
Who was in charge then? Was it
There was like every day was a different
Different
person. There was let me see.
Eddie Marlin was there?
Eddie,
Was he just a figurehead?
Eddie. No, well, no, I mean, yeah, Eddie was there like back in the '80s and stuff.
Right.
But '97 there was some guy.
Rory Macklin involved?
No, there was somebody. This guy Burton, something
Tim
Burton. I don't know where the heck they got him from, but
Yeah.
he didn't know nothing about wrestling. And then as far as booking, Mike. Oh my gosh, he was a horrible worker and worse ideas. But you know, I talked to Jerry Lawler at the time, and he said, you know, he asked guys to help him with some ideas, and this guy, oh my God, what was his name? Last name, Mike. Anyway, he said, you know, Jerry told me, oh, you know, he wrote out like 3 pages of stuff, so he gave him the book, and he was just terrible. And then actually Dutch Mantell was still there, so Dutch took over for a little bit,
Right.
but it was nothing, you know, really stable. And then actually Randy Hales took over,
Right, I remember
you
when he was
know,
there.
which, you know, he had been with the company for a long time. I mean, but just kind of as a gopher with, you know, Jerry Jarrett and Lawler and stuff. But
Right.
eventually, somehow he got to, you know, just being around the business for all those years to where he was then booking and stuff. So
How did you start working for Shawn Michaels down in Texas for TWA?
yeah, well, I had wound up, you know, I was still working in Tennessee, and then wound up in working a show around Memphis the day before they had the Valentine's Day Massacre, the pay-per-view in Memphis.
Right.
And so, you know, I ran into Sean at the pay-per-view, and he had been out a while already with his back and stuff. And so we wound up talking, and he had mentioned to me that he was going to open up wrestling school, that they had already ran a couple of, you know, shows and did really well, and he would need somebody to, you know, help him out, and, you know, would I be interested? So just over the next few months we kind of kept in touch, and I really had nothing better going on. I thought that was going to, you know, be a good opportunity for me, so.
Now, did Shawn have TV right off the bat, or did he just start with house shows?
Not right off the bat, but it wasn't that long that we actually got TV, and it was just a 30-minute show, aired Saturday nights at midnight, and it was going up against, I think at the time in San Antonio, they didn't get SmackDown live, so SmackDown was running up against our little half-hour show, and also WCW was. And we were actually beating WCW in the ratings. You know, the little half-hour show was doing really good. And, you know, the guys that we trained, that first class, you know, turned out some really good guys.
Brian Danielson was there?
Yep. Spanky, Shooter Schultz, and
Lance Cade?
right, and you know, so that, but you know, we never duplicated turning out that kind of talent. But yeah, no, so the, you know, the way that that was going and how talented those guys were, we were, you know, or Sean was looking to, you know, get TV, which he managed to do. But the problem was, one, I'm just never really understood, you know, as big a name and as well known as Sean was in San Antonio, he never really managed to get sponsorship. And the TV station that was taping the TV show, editing the TV show, was charging him $2,500 a week. So any money that, you know, was coming from the wrestling school was going out on the other end.
So was this Shawn's own money, or did Vince help Shawn with this at all? Is this
No.
like a farm system? This was all Shawn's business?
Yep.
Okay.
But you know, I don't know for sure, you know, how much of his own money that he used. I'm sure he used some, but like I said, the wrestling school, that pretty much covered most of the expenses for the TV. But he didn't want to just, that's why he was doing this, to make some money, not to just use one to pay for the other. And then I think, he was eventually, because he saw the potential, he realized what talented kids we had turned out and stuff, and so he wanted to try and, make it the best that he could, but that would mean, using his own money, and he just, didn't want it. He wasn't stupid enough to do that.
Did you see the potential in Brian Danielson and Spanky from back then?
Yeah. I mean, those guys were, and not only that, but they were, willing to work extra anytime they got a chance, and I'm sure they, watched a bunch of hours of tape, different matches, because the stuff that they did, I mean, was pretty amazing, and all those guys, other than Shooter Schultz, might have been like 22, 23, but the three others, Cade, Danielson, and Spanky, were all like right out of high school, 18
I think
years
Sean's
old.
nephew was down there too.
He was, Matt Bentley.
Yes.
And, that's another thing. I'm kind of surprised that I would have thought he was as good and as talented as the others, but he was a part of the next class, and I'm surprised that he never really.
I know he did ECW for a little bit, and then I brought him in the Ring of Honor. And when I went down there and I saw Sean's guys, I remember calling Paulie and telling him he had to book Matt and especially Brian and Spanky, and for whatever reason Paul never did. But when I started Ring of Honor, I used all those guys because they're awesome talents. So we actually sell a lot of the Sean's TVs. We did a deal with Sean to sell his TVs from back then. And some of his house shows. You were responsible for taking us around.
Yes.
Actually, so we thank you for that.
Oh, no problem.
What are your memories of how could I forget his name? He trained everybody. Rudy Boy Gonzalez. What are your memories of Rudy Boy?
I had some problems with Rudy Boy. I mean, well, I don't know. When I first, got to San Antonio and stuff, Sean had already started the school, and he had Rudy Boy and had Ken Johnson kind of as the instructors.
Right.
And then, I came in a little bit later. The school had already, got going, and not only that, but pretty much at that time my responsibility was to go out on the road and book shows, and so I didn't really wasn't spending all that much time at the wrestling school, but Rudy just and actually I think both of those guys sort of there was probably a certain amount of jealousy, but heck, Sean and I had been friends for years, so I don't know if how much they would have known of that. And then Ken Johnson actually wound up quitting, but Rudy never went away. But I had a couple of issues with him, just the way that he go at me, I wasn't booking enough shows and this and that, and man, I mean, I was the right-hand man and chief bottle washer. I really did a lot of stuff. I mean, did the ticket sales at the shows. Then I would have to go to Sean's dad's and reconcile the tickets against the money for the tickets, as well as for souvenirs, T-shirts, and all that stuff. I would go to Sean's house and we'd write the TV together. And then, like I said, still going on the road, trying to, go to different towns, trying to book shows and stuff. So.
Were you his top heel?
Yeah,
Did you wear a mask as Venom?
No. Yeah, I just had like a sort of
black hat,
reverse mohawk.
Right.
Hair down the middle, and the sides were kind of shaved and like a goatee type of thing, and But yeah, and then I actually had well, we wound up working the deal where I won the company some kind of way, and then we actually, Sean at that point had not worked for probably 2 or 3 years. He had back surgery and
Right.
stuff, and I managed to talk him into, we worked a hardcore match, and it was we had made a T-shirt, and it was April 4th, 2000, so it was 4-4 for history, and control of the company. So that was the. We worked the hardcore match, and then of course worked an angle out of that where Shooter Schultz came down and helped Sean, so Sean got the company back, and then I started working an angle with Shooter Schultz. So.
Did you ever think that Sean? What was Sean's plans? Was he going to stay retired, or was it just a matter?
That's what I assumed.
Right. Were you shocked when he got back in the ring after all that?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't going there to help him for a year, and then he was going to shut it down.
You were there all the way until the end?
Yeah. Well, I guess probably not the end. I think I might have left a couple months before that, and I just really never. The way things were at the end, I to this day still don't really have a clear picture of, because at the end, for some reason, something had changed between him and I, or the way he was treating me, and I never did find out what that was, and I would still to this day love to know what that was.
Oh, you and Sean were saying?
Yeah, because we were, we were close as, we talked about a lot of stuff, and but then all of a sudden, just like you flipped a switch, and he just was ragging on me for, I just don't know what. That's why that kind of drove me to just say, hey, this ain't worth it.
As Sean got more successful, did his personality change? Did he get a big ego, or did he always stay the same level guy with you, or did you see changes?
No, some changes. In fact, well, the one thing I kind of gotta mention, this is interesting, and this is going back now to the when I first met him in Texas in 1985, and as I told you earlier, he was pretty acrobatic and stuff, and I was trying to learn the moves from him, which I thought would make the tag team better, and we could kind of be interchangeable. Well, for whatever reason, we had worked in Odessa, and I think it was like where you have a tag team in each corner or whatever.
4 corners match?
Yeah,
Right.
and then somehow he wound up screwing something up where he wound up getting all the pins, and but so Al Madril at the time was booking, so he decided to give me a singles match on TV, and in that singles match, I used some of the acrobatic things that I learned from him, and that he showed me how to do. And I remember having that TV and then meeting him the next day, and we're getting ready to go to the town. And before we left, he, brought this up, and I just don't understand. You're trying to be Shawn Michaels. You're not trying to be Paul Diamond. That was the funniest thing. I really just, I thought I was trying to improve the team, but because his plan was always to, make it as a single, he didn't see it that way, And my parents thought the same way, and. Okay.
I hear you. After Sean's, you opened up your own wrestling school, I believe, right?
Sort of. I hooked up with. I went up. My dad had got ill. Terminally, basically. So I moved up to back up to Canada, to Winnipeg, where my parents were living at the time. I met a guy up there that he had a trucking company, and he was running some wrestling shows and such, and so he had the building and the ring and stuff. So I basically was kind of an instructor at his facility, and we split sort of, the proceeds. And then also I was working up there. He, like I said, ran some shows, and I helped him with, booking some of that stuff. But that it was, that was kind of like just kind of trying to, he was trying to, bring some decent stuff up there in Canada, but
right.
For me, it was, the end was near kind of thing. And
what do you do these days for work?
I just actually, I work for the City of Decatur Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay.
So, I get to work with kids. I used to play soccer, so if it needs, teaching them or coaching soccer, or also, there's a lot of things. The City of Decatur has like 6 different facilities. They have like batting cages and softball facility, and so really, times when they have softball leagues, you keep score, or working on batting cages, so it's really kind of cool. But just that I am close enough sort of to be connected with sports and stuff. Really, I enjoy that, and I'm really glad that sort of came up here recently.
Do you still follow the business? You watch TNA?
Very rarely, a few minutes here and there, but no, I don't really know what exactly is going on. No. In fact, I was talking to your guy, yeah,
right.
And he was telling me about how the business had gone to PG and stuff after, I guess Linda decided, yeah. So I was really not aware of that at all. That kind of shocked me.
I was going to ask you who the next big star is, but since you don't want to,
No, yeah.
What do you think tag team wrestling right now is a lost art? Because
yeah, I don't really. Again, I don't watch that much. Are there actual tag teams that are a tag team that they're
a lot of makeshift tag teams, right?
That's what I'm thinking,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's not like the Midnight Express,
right.
back in the day.
And
right.
that to have. You got to have a tag team that are 2 guys that are together for some time, and they kind of get used to each other, and things click.
Right.
So,
hey,
yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned you traveled with Mr. Fuji. Obviously, Mr. Fuji is the king of the ribs. You have any good Mr. Fuji stories?
yeah. But I tell you what. Oh gosh! All right, yeah. How could I ever forget this one? The funniest thing, man. We're actually we were working in San Antonio, and Pat was hurt, so Fuji was going to fill in. We were working Marty and Sean. So I didn't know, go down to the ring and stuff. The match starts, and God, let me see. Was it him? He actually wanted to start the match, which I thought was kind of odd. But anyway, so him and Janetti, and they started. Fuji does all his weird karate shit, and just chops Marty down. He's on the ground, selling and stuff. And Fuji, like how he does his little bow, right? Well, so. He just beat up Marty and stuff. Marty's, like I said, selling on the ground, and Fuji kind of turns away from him and, gonna do his bow to the crowd. And as he bends over, Janetti reaches up and, grabs the back of his tights and pulls him down. As he does that, a piece of toilet paper falls out of his tights. And man, the whole crowd just, and I was glad I was wearing a mask because I was laughing so hard. And as far as trying to be serious in that match, that was over at that point. I cannot believe it. That was great. And then he picked up the toilet paper and raked it across Marty's eyes.
Oh. Looking back at your career, well, I guess what would one of your matches be that you would love to show your grandkids? What's one of your favorite matches?
Probably the Royal Rumble against the Rockers in Miami, just because I thought, we did some acrobatics. I thought we were ahead of our time, or as far as tag team wrestling. I mean, was not until a few years later that guys started doing that kind of stuff and teamwork, and so yeah. I mean, I think that would really be proud to show them that one.
Obviously, Marty Jannetty and Pat Tanaka are known for huge, partiers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Any crazy stories with those two?
I just it's something that I got reminded of, and it wasn't actually Pat, but when we were in Minneapolis, it wound up being Jannetty and myself that night, and we had the Nasty Boys were staying at Brad Rangan's place out where he had the wrestling school that it was training guys for Vern, and so we had a kind of a party there at the house, and then headed on out to the clubs, and again combined with the pills and the booze and stuff. Marty and I had wound up meeting these two girls,
right?
And we went to their house and wound up being about 3 in the morning, and I don't know why or how or whatever. We wound up going to a 24-hour gym, and they had a pool in there and stuff. And man, we the girls, like you had the one side where the women went in, and the other side where the men. But so the girls went in and stuff, and we had just worked that angle where we they dropped the belts
right.
to us, and here's Jannetty and I at 3 in the morning, and we walked in through the women's side, one. And the girls got their bathing suits on and stuff, and man, we got out where the pool was and stuff. And I remember very little that I do remember. Just stripped down to my underwear, and like the manager's out there, and I remember taking my underwear off, and he's going, no, 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 and Jannetty, he's already walking around, no clothes on, and we wound up going in the sauna with the girls and stuff, and luckily there wasn't a whole lot of people there. I imagine if you wanted to call the police, he could have. You certainly don't have your patrons walk around in the nude in the pool and the sauna and stuff, so that was pretty wild.
Any regrets?
No, I can't say that. If I had to do it all over again, I would. It was a blast. I imagine, anything if I could have to do different. Of course, the drug years, I definitely would have done that different because, I was making decent money, and I have nothing to show for it at this point. So
drugs took that much of a toll on your?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just I was into the pills for a number of years. And I lost, a couple of homes, and just pretty sad.
So you're all cleaned up, and
I'm all cleaned up. I've been clean for the last 7 years, and but it just takes so long to dig out of what you put yourself in for those years. So finally things are starting to turn around and stuff, and just once I was done, I've always wanted to make a living at sports,
right?
And once the wrestling ended and stuff, I just bounced around to kind of menial labor jobs that I didn't want to do, just hated. But so now that like I said, this Parks and Recreation thing is, I love what I do, and I like going to work and stuff. So that surely makes a difference, from just hating to have to get up every morning and dreading what you're going to have to do that day. But it's not so, and I am really, really glad and thank God that that has turned around.
Is there anything that you want to say to your fans out there that you never had a chance to say until now? I suppose the fact that regardless of all the drug issues and all that stuff,
I can, honestly and with confidence say that I went out there and worked as hard as I could to try and give them the best show that I could every single night that we went out there.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today with us. It was a great interview, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And we wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much. I certainly did enjoy myself. It was fun, kind of, turning back the clock and thinking back of some of the fun stuff and some of the not so fun stuff. So I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you.
Cool. Thanks.